So it's a whole combination, really. There's I in each book I try to include mostly stories that are ongoing and are still haunted, but I do enjoy like the historical research and including. It's just really interesting to see how things haven't really changed all that much as far as the types of things that happen in haunted places. And
do you run into more skeptics than not? I mean, I'm a skeptic. I must confess. I've never seen a ghost. Well, some of the people I used to go to school with were a little bit. But anyway, besides that, how do you deal with someone who says, "Oh, phooey"?
I really, myself, I really haven't. Maybe 2 times in the entire 7 years that my books have been out, has anyone actually come up to me and told me that they, didn't believe it. The others have not mentioned it to my face, so thankfully. But I really don't get a lot of skeptics anymore. When I first started out writing in 2000 and researching the book, I had people coming up to me, kind of with a grin on their face saying, do you really think you'll be able to get enough stories to fill a book? And, now look where I am, because it's...
When you start a book, what premise do you start from? That I am going to report on actual ghost stories, or I am doing some history on a particular house or whatever? Or what is the mindset when you start writing a book about ghosts?
What I do is, I research through other books online. I get word of mouth and emails and things like that. I get a whole stack of leads, and then from each lead about a possible haunted place, I make sure that I can find at least 3 different sources of information. And then from there, once I get some of the information that I want for it, then I start doing the historical research. Looking through archives online and old newspapers and things like that. And so for each story that I write, I get a whole folder filled with just all of this information that I've collected about each place. And then then I'm all set to just take my folder with me wherever I go and work on writing the stories whenever I get the time to write them.
Well, your books are very popular, and the question is are people essentially buying this, or are they just enjoying a good story? And when I say buy, I mean the subject of the ghost, or people like good stories.
Right.
They like to read history, legends, those kinds of things.
Well, I think the popularity of the original series of the Haunted Northern New York series is because it's just one certain fairly small area of New York State. Everyone wanted to see, where the nearest place to them was, and so it's just I think it's more interesting. I mean, those books have done really well, and I think it's just because people are curious what's nearby in their neighborhood that might be haunted. And
Shadow Chasers, how do you respond to a skeptic like me? What do you say to them?
I think we just agree to disagree. We really, like Cheri, we don't really run into a lot of skeptics, because when we do talks, the people who come are the people who are interested in it and who believe in it. But when I do run up against skeptics, I don't really try and change how they feel. I'll tell them, well, this is the evidence that we have. This is what we've seen, this is what we've experienced. But we're not going to try and force them to feel the same way we do, because it's kind of pointless.
Right.
I just throw science at you.
Do you find more people beginning to believe this? I mean, you're now using some kind of tools, which it's not just the I saw a wisp, the willow or something. You have some kind of tools. Does that cause you to have more believability when you start talking about this stuff?
The whole point is to be able to have skeptics attack the evidence, and they can't be able to disprove it. So that's why we always document everything like 3 different ways. So you're just like buried under documentation. So if any skeptic has a question, they can look at it and go, well, then that's just an anomaly. Because they can't say, well, you did this improperly, you did this improperly.
And if you can get them to admit, okay, this is an anomaly, this doesn't have any real tie to any environmental factor, then it's like, you're kind of one step away from admitting that it's a ghost, or that there's, that it is something unexplained or paranormal.
One of the viewers was curious to know, and she wanted Cheri to answer the question, but I think I'll ask all of you. Would you live in a house that you knew was haunted?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yep, of course.
And the reason that I say that, well, the reason I say that is, out of all the stories I've written, all the people that I've talked to, I always guess that about 95% remain in houses that they've decided are haunted, that they believe are haunted. They remain in the house because they just become used to what's going on and they accept it. There's only a much smaller percentage of houses that are so frighteningly haunted and bad things are happening that the people kind of are forced to have to leave. But the vast majority of stories that I write about, those people are still living in their houses.
Well, Stephen King would probably look at a ghost and see trouble. But most of the ghosts you're talking about, or spirits or whatever, are benevolent, really, or passive at the very least. Would you not say?
Well, most ghost stories, like the ones you see in movies and stuff, are so exaggerated. The real hauntings are like maybe once a day your cup will move from one side of the shelf to the other, sort of thing, or the lights will flicker for no good reason. It's not really benevolent. It's just they're all really, really weak things, and only if you're like predisposed to being frightened by these things will these things seem so exaggerated and so frightening.
Plus, ghosts are only trouble if they're trouble in life. What we found through our research is spirits act the same way they acted when they were alive. If when they were alive they were one of those people who really wanted to push someone down the stairs, and did it, then of course when they're dead, that's what they're going to do as well. But if there's someone who's very nice and very kind in life, then when they're a ghost, they're going to be the same way. So they aren't very scary at all.
And the other thing is that a lot of hauntings are of a residual type, and Phil is good at explaining the residual hauntings, but that's not a conscious haunting. It's not anything that you can interact with. It's like an imprint of something that the deceased did so often while they were alive that it kind of left an imprint on the atmosphere, like someone coming down the stairs. People talk about seeing the same old apparition, frequently coming down the stairs and things like that.
The residual is, in scientific terms, it's a burn-in into the electromagnetic field of the environment. The person doesn't even have to be dead for this to take place. There was a study done in California where the experiment was they had someone in the similar mindset repeat the same activity for about 6 months, walking up and down this hallway. And immediately after that 6 months, they pulled him out and placed some tenants in there to stay there for the next 6 months. Those tenants reported hearing footsteps walking up and down the hallway. It's just the repetitive activity can burn into the environment. A common one is like the battlefields, like Sackett's or Gettysburg. Such a massive event happened that it burned into the environment. It's not actually a haunting so much as replaying the energy that was there.
And so it's nothing to be feared in people's houses. If their haunting is residual, they can't interact with it.
Well, interesting. I never heard of the residual comment before, but that does prove to be interesting. A question that comes in from one of our viewers who preferred not to be on the air: are ghosts more active during the day or at night?
Phil can answer this one. He's good at explaining it.
The reason why there's been such folklore, there's been so many reports of things that go bump in the night, is a direct relationship to basically what we're studying, electromagnetic fields. And at nighttime, the Earth's magnetosphere, that's why you can hear radio waves so much. You can hear radio stations from further away and everything that's bouncing off the magnetosphere of the Earth. During the daytime, solar radiation is compressing the